Hello, my name is Melanie Campbell. I'm the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the 13th annual BWR Policy Forum Series in partnership with the Congressional Black Caucus as a part of their Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's annual legislative conference. So we thank the CBCF for partnering us for 13 years to have this always rich conversation with Black women leaders from all across the country, from so many walks of life, to really go deep about what's important to Black women. And because of COVID-19, we didn't let COVID-19 stop us. And thank you, CBCF, for allowing us to do this virtually. So, but what's going on top of the mind for Black women? This policy forum this year is about voting rights and the role that Black women play in the midst of leading that and organizing. And we know we are in a fight for our lives when it comes to voting rights in this country. It's under attack from so many states. And nonpartisanly speaking, it's one party that is leading the attack and voter suppression in 48 states across this country. So we're having this conversation about the importance of the role of Black women and our allies, but also the importance of what we all can do, those listening, what you can do to make sure that our voting rights are protected. So to get us started, I'm going to ask our moderator for this hour of power, this power table talk we're about to have around voting rights and what Black women are doing and what you can do to join us to help save our democracy from peril. Because if we don't have voting rights, then we don't have a democracy for all people to have a voice in this country, to have self-determination. So I turn it over to my sister JOYCELYN Tate, who is a senior policy advisor for the National Coalition and Black Women's Roundtable, who will introduce our panel and get us started. JOYCELYN, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I am so delighted and so happy to have these amazing Black women on our panel today, the Black women leaders in the voting rights reform movement. First, let me introduce CORA Masters-Berry. She is a board member of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and she's the former First Lady of DC. We also have HELEN BUTLER, who is the executive director for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, and she is the convener of the Georgia Black Women's Roundtable. We also have Joy Cheney, who is the executive director of the Washington Bureau and senior vice president of public policy at the National Urban League. And we have Dr. JOHNNETTA Cole, who is the president and chair of the board of the National Council of Negro Women, and LATOSHA Brown, who will be joining us. She is the co-founder for Black Voters Matter. And we also have as a panelist our own Melanie Campbell, who is the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and she is the national convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. Ladies, welcome. First, let's start off. I want to ask you, coming off of a summer of voting rights activism, what have you been leading in the voting rights movement over the summer? Melanie, and we'll start with you.
Dr. Cole, you want to start us off as our partner?
I would be happy to. I'd be honored to do so. First of all, let me say it is always special to be at a table with Black women who have more on their minds than what's to eat. This period has been one of important activism. And the National Council of Negro Women could not be more proud to be in coalition with our sister leader, Melanie Campbell. And because we believe in collaboration, Sister Leader Melanie and I have reached out across our country to leaders of Black women's organizations. And with that amazing sense of strategy and civil rights and women's rights activism, it was really Melanie Campbell who imagined a period of activism. And that has involved just basic old time organizing. Pick up the phone and call your congressperson. Tell them that voters' rights are human rights and American rights. We have had an amazing town hall where, yes, Black women have stood up and spoken out, as well as our allies, about the centrality of voting if we're going to keep a democracy. But we've also participated in direct action. And I'm going to go right to it and say, it's been a number of years since I've been arrested for civil disobedience. But there was no choice. Sister Leader Melanie had led the way the week before. Yes, it is a way. It is a dramatic way to say, I will be pushed into this paddy wagon because voting rights are that important to me. Not just to me as an individual, but to my community, to Black women, our families, but also to Indigenous people, certainly to brown people, to elderly people like myself, to disabled people. And so a whole lot's going on. And it all has to do with the most fundamental right of every American, the right to vote.
Thank you, JOYCELYN. Thank you, Dr. Tate. This summer of activism, right, that didn't start in July, actually been going on all summer. We did various organizations. One sister you hear from very, very soon, my sister LATOSHA, who will talk about what the Black Voters Matter did. But what really got all of us started, as far as what we have done, we have this movement that we all are having to be forced in, as CORA talked about, why are we here? We shouldn't be, but we are, right? And so we all started talking amongst ourselves about what else we needed to continue to do over the course of watching the fact that in the Congress, they weren't voting to just take care of business that as it should have been when it comes to our voting rights. So we knew we were in trouble because there's an election coming down the street. And we know that we're talking about not just how we vote that's under threat with voter suppression, but who gets to count that vote, who gets to control the political system in this country, where if the kinds of voter suppression laws that are being passed stand, then we are talking about the inability to control the whole voting system and have one party rule, and that is, last I checked, is an autocracy and not a democracy, as flawed as it even may be in this country. So we knew we had to do more. And as Black women, we know the role we play is very unique when it comes to the power of the Black vote. Not only do we turn out, but we're leading. No, we're not the only ones, but we're leading. We're using all of our tools in the toolbox, is more of a say these days, to make sure that we not only turn it out, but we also leverage that vote to move an agenda that is critical to our community, an agenda around justice. And so part of that was being able to understand and listen to the ancestors that are speaking to us, that this is the time for us to come together in a very unique way. So we put together something called Black Women Take Action and Allies. So as Black women, as we worked hard in 2020 to help get the first Black woman vice president, we kept all of that energy, and we're putting it into fighting for our voting rights. So Black Women Take Action, we did, as Dr. Cole said, it's part of that is direct action, that's civil disobedience, that's going to jail, right? That's meeting the White House, pushing the administration, the president and vice president to do more. They have the power of that bully pulpit to do more. So putting pressure on them, putting pressure on both House and the Senate to do all that needs to be done. The House, in many of our opinion, has been doing, moving legislation. It gets stuck at the Senate. So really pushing, and that's why we targeted our direct action to the Senate when it came to Black Women Take Action, to really start putting the outside pressure as well, and waking up the conscience of the country that this attack is not just about Black people. This attack is on the democracy. It's all of us. And so getting the people to speak up, because we have to have a movement to win this battle. It's too big. We've never seen the kinds of voter suppression happening in modern day times, I say, that can't be fixed. We know the Supreme Court's not going to do us right because of what they did earlier with an Arizona case earlier this summer. So we know we can't go to the courts right now for that is the highest court in the land. So we have to depend on a remedy to make the voting rights, our voting rights act stronger because of things that happened in 2013 with the Supreme Court. So history has shown us that we, as African Americans especially, have always had to have federal protections to have our voting rights. So we're going to keep fighting and keep pushing and keep advocating and engaging our community and the nation in this voting rights battle, because if our democracy is at stake, our children's future is at stake on how politics impacts our lives. And if this stays the way it is without a change in the law, then we are talking about not just losing Black political power, but not the inability to move on critical issues that impact our communities.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Let me turn to Helen Butler. In Georgia, what activities have you been leading in the voting rights reform movement?
Thank you, JOYCELYN and Melanie, for convening this great leadership of women leaders throughout the country. And we've been modeling the national Black Women's Roundtable. We were there with the direct action that we had, but we've also been doing things at the state level in Georgia. We've been doing what Dr. Cole said. We've been phone banking. We've been texting Congress, our senators. We're doing a social media campaign to help educate voters that why you need to call your congressman and why you need to call your senator, because voting rights is so critical to everything that we do. We testified at the House, the subcommittee of the House Judiciary about why it was important to have federal legislation that would improve voting rights and make voting accessible for all people. We testified at the Senate Rules hearing also to let them know that we had to have the protections similar to the 1965 Voting Rights Act that would have protections for voters to be able to exercise that right without barriers. So we've been advocating, we've been in the streets, but we're trying to say to all that federal legislation is important for us to maintain the protection of our right to vote. And we've been active in that endeavor in Georgia and working with others to make sure we get this accomplished.
Thank you so much, Helen. And let me go for a second to LaTosha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, and TAMIKA Mallory, the co-founder of Until Freedom. Tell us what you've been doing over the summer as far as activism and what the projects that you've been leading in the voting rights reform movement.
Hello, sisters. Thank y'all so much for having us on today. And of course, to Melanie, I appreciate you as always. You are leading and keeping us together and making sure that we're properly engaged in this fight and doing it unified. And I think that's so important. You know, and I've really been privileged to be working with LaTosha Brown throughout the summer. And you know, we first of all been working together even before the summer, but this summer we really have been putting boots on the ground, trying to find ways to expand our reach and also to expand our issues. We've said several times that you of course can't have all of the other issues that we're fighting for without our voting rights. And so we understand that this movement is critical, that in order for us to be able to properly get an overhaul in policing, we have to be able to maintain and even increase the ability to go to the polls and to vote our interests, to vote the individuals in office who will help us to get the changes that we want to see. And so we've been out encouraging folks all summer as we have been engaged in about 5 different actions where our members have been arrested. We just had an action this past week, I guess last Friday. It was called Freedom Friday March, where Black Voters Matter and other groups and Until Freedom led an action at the airport. We actually went to the airport, shut down the terminal where Delta and American Airlines and others are. We stopped traffic there. We got arrested in the outside where the police had to stop cars for over 20 minutes. There was about 26 of us who participated in that action. CORA Masters Berry actually came out to support us there. And, you know, unfortunately, people were definitely upset. You know, it wasn't convenient, it wasn't comfortable, but we recognize that some of the actions we've been doing, the police have become very comfortable in sort of, you know, helping to assist, if you will, or move things along quickly. And we have to escalate our actions and take them to other places and spaces so that we can really create the type of disruption that is needed. The day of that action was August 6th, and that was actually the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And there were many members who were going home on that day for recess, some of them going home for recess. And so we chose that action to help slow down traffic and really, again, escalate our approach to civil disobedience. And so we have hosted a gun violence awareness summit to have that in conjunction with all of the activities that have been happening during the summer. There is money that is for the community that people can access through fund initiative, $5.3 billion. And we want to that our organizations get access to that money so that they can do the work in the community of addressing the issues of gun violence and the spike that we're seeing happen across the nation.
Thank you so much, Tamika. And Ms. Berry and JOYCELYN, I'll go to you next.
First of all, thank you, Melanie, for your leadership. I'm so proud to be a part of it. It's a wonderful thing when Black women lead, and you are the one. And as a result of the initial efforts that we put forth in terms of marching and fighting for voting rights and against voter suppression, Black women were on the lead, and that will always be there for history. That being said, when I woke up on my birthday, May 7th, I thought I was about to have a very relaxed summer. I had all these plans. I was going to go here and there. None of that has materialized, as you can hear. I've got gun violence things going on at the center. I'm down there where people being arrested. I'm making speeches. You know, people are calling me a jailbird. None of this was expected. But when I began to really understand that this was really happening, that these laws were being passed across the country, I've been there already. I did that, as I said, 40 years ago. It dawned on me that here we are again. And I just said very simply on one of our calls, when Black women, I don't know which call it was, I said, I'm ready to get arrested. I haven't been ready to get arrested since they threw me in the paddy wagon at Texas Southern University and I lost my shoe. So I'm saying that I'm doing everything. I'm just a supporting cast. I'm there when Melanie calls me. I'm there when Tamika calls me, whatever it takes. And not only am I doing that, but I think it's my responsibility to bring along the youth, to talk to them about how important this is, to explain, as Tamika said, we don't vote, we don't have anybody in office who's going to understand the importance of gun violence or the importance of criminal justice or police brutality. The vote is the key to our very existence. If we don't have the vote to put the people in office who will respond to the needs we have, we're back in Jim Crow and maybe even almost back to sharecropping and on a plantation. I feel that very, very organically. So to answer your question, LaTosha Brown, Tamika Mallory, JOHNNETA Cole, Melanie Campbell, Barbara Skinner, all of the, don't want to leave out Tamika's cohort that I love so much, Tamika.
Linda Sarsour.
Linda Sarsour, who was on the front line. I'm proud of that. If you look at that front line, it is not just diverse in terms of where we all come from, but it was diverse in terms of age, ethnic groups, gender. It's just powerful. So the answer to your question, I'm just doing whatever anybody asks me to do. I'm just an humble servant to show up and facilitate and support wherever I can so we can lift up our people in this battle. And we will win, but it's not going to be easy. I've been here before.
And that's very powerful, Ms. Berry, to let other people know out here that are watching, do whatever you can, wherever you can and wherever you're called. Let me turn really quickly to Joy Cheney. Hi, Joy. Tell us what the National
everyone
been doing this summer. And what you've been doing and what has the National Urban League been doing leading in this voting rights reform movement?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me to the Black Women's Roundtable, as well as the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation and the National Council of Negro Women. Thank you all so much. One of the things I personally have been doing on behalf of the National Urban League is engaging in the work that they have been doing, gathering Black women. Thank you so much. You gave me my first opportunity to sing at a rally through you all, and it was exciting. And it brought joy to what really is a serious moment that we are in as a nation. As you said, I do represent the National Urban League. I bring you greetings on behalf of Mark Morial, but our president and CEO. And one of the things the National Urban League works at is at the intersection of economic justice, civil justice, and criminal justice. But across all of our justice platforms, the vote is central. And without it, we can't do any of the other things that we want to do. And so it is so essential that we have put our energy and our efforts into protecting ferociously that right to vote over the summer and really all year. Because what we realized was the success that we all, engaged in over the last year in terms of getting people out, not outcome determinative, but getting people out to vote was getting a pushback from those who would seek to inhibit us from voting. And so this summer, our 91 affiliates representing 300 communities across the country have been doing direct action, nonpartisan C3 direct action, good old fashioned calling your senators. We have a phone to action that I would love to raise for you all because it's still active. Protect Our Vote Protect Our Vote and text to 52886. And one of the things when you do that, you can reach out directly to your member of Congress, directly to your senator. This is really important, nonpartisan, old-fashioned, as Dr. Cole said, grassroots activity aimed at making sure that we have both the For the People Act as well as the John Lewis Voting Advancement Act. Both of them are moving their way through the Congress or in various stages, but it is absolutely essential that we get them to the president's desk. And I hope we'll talk about what each of them does, but that's our singular focus right now because it is so central to all the work that we do, economic, civil, and criminal justice.
Thank you so much, Joy. And Dr. Cole, I understand that you have to leave us shortly. So I want to ask you this question. What do you believe is the most threatening voting rights issue that must be addressed in federal voting rights reform legislation?
Let's first understand that acts to suppress our votes, it's like a tsunami. I remember hearing Brother President Mark Morial use that term. It's like a tsunami across our country. If that continues on the state level, we have no choice. Truth of the matter is, we've never had a choice to date for our best protection except on the federal level. And that's why we Black women, like Ellen Baker said, we believe in freedom. And we who believe in freedom will not stop until it comes. And so this is a summer of direct action because we must have the protection of our federal government. I just want to reach out for 1 minute, and I shouldn't start this because it's going to turn into a Black women's love fest. But I just want to say to First Sister, as I call the First Lady of Washington, D.C. First Sister, how long have we been at this? But I tell you, when I look and I see a shero like TAMIKA MALLORY, I say, I can give some more. Call on us again. Because let's remember, and forgive me for using a little history in her story, Black women, because of that intersection of gender and race, we had to fight. We had to fight white women suffragettes to get the right to vote. We've had a long history in her story of with our brothers fighting for the right for Black people to vote. So you know what? Like the old folks would say, First Sister, we ain't nowhere tied yet.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cole. Those are so profound words, just to encourage and keep younger sisters in the movement and going strong. If you can go out there, we can too.
Thank you, Dr. Cole, for stepping in the way you did. Thank CORA, TAMIKA, everyone on this Zoom for doing what you do. And Dr. Cole, I can listen to you all day, right? As you lift us, and thank you for lifting Black women as the head of the National Council of Negro Women, and so many things that you've done over the course of your life. And when you stepped on that paddy wagon, you know, we all were like, what are we doing, right? And everyone has really put your life on the line, not just in this movement, but in others. And so what we want to make sure is that we thank you for that. I know you have to step away for another engagement, but I just wanted to stop and say thank you. And then JOYCELYN, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, okay, I'll open it up to other people on the panel. What do you think are some of the biggest threats to not having voting rights reform and voting rights legislation? I'll start with you, Joy.
So the biggest threats, I think, to voting rights legislation are really these bills that have been spreading like wildfire across the country, that are happening in state legislatures across the country. That really is the biggest threat. Those are efforts to roll back and really prevent people of all parties to stand in the way, to create hurdles for all parties to voting. And that is why it's so important that, you know, the Senate be able to pass the For the People Act, because that bill will help us prevent those types of anti-democratic, anti-voter measures. so important that the president sign that. And so that's why we're fighting. Then we, of course, need to make sure that we're undoing the damage to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which, of course, had a birthday during this past summer. So we have to make sure that we are making sure that we are reinstituting pre-clearance measures that will allow us to review the activities that states and localities are engaging in, especially those who have, examples and histories of disenfranchising people. And frankly, there are a lot of folks who may not have originally been on the list, but need to be on a new list based on what has been happening in terms of these state legislatures across the country. Hundreds of bills that have been introduced. And that, we know that there are strong fights in Georgia and Texas and Florida from parts of the legislature. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what your party is, we want everyone to be able to vote. We don't want to create hurdles that make it difficult. So that's really, I think, the greatest threat, is that there are, folks that are getting in the way there. And I think the third threat is the filibuster. It has always been a threat to civil rights. And it is something that people pull and they bring out of the woodworks, and they have it in their toolkit to try to get in the way, because the vast majority of people support these measures. They're bipartisan measures. And then you'll have a few who try to get in the way of that. And they do it, the minority do it through the filibuster. And so all three of those are really clear and present dangers to the franchise.
To me, what is the biggest threat is not being able to have the representatives that I want to choose to represent me and my communities, and to ensure that we get all of the things that would improve our communities by having the right representation. Public policy impacts every aspect of our life, and the people that make those policies are elected officials. So the elected officials are elected by being voted into office. So if we don't have protection so every citizen, every person can make a choice for themselves through their vote, then we lose our power and our skin. So to me, it means my power would be lost to be able to impact my own way of life and to impact the way of life for my community by not being able to have the representation that I want. I want good elected officials that will do the right thing for our communities, and especially for Black women who happen to take in all aspects of the community, not just themselves, but really to have the representation that will lead to things that will improve our community. So it's critical from a representation standpoint.
Thank you so much, Helen. And we have LaTosha back with us. LaTosha, first I want to ask you, just coming off of this summer of voting rights activism, what efforts have you been leading in the voting rights reform movement?
Well, thank you for having me. And I also want to say a shout out to all of the sisters that have spoken already and been a part of this movement to make sure that we're protecting and expanding voting rights, and particularly to Melanie Campbell, that, there are a couple of things I really want to note. I want to talk about kind of the work that we've been doing, but I do want to note that this work is ongoing, and it didn't just start this summer. This is why we have to have Black-led organizations that are well-funded, that we're supporting, and groups like the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. A lot of my leadership development as a young woman, I've been involved with this organization for over 20-something years, right? Because part of what we have to recognize is that we're in protracted struggle, and we have to institution build and take care of our institutions as we're doing this work. And so some of the work that we've been doing with my organization, Black Voters Matter, which is a part of the coalition, is that what we've been doing is literally seeking to organize local communities and on the state level around pushing for this legislation that we need voting protection on the federal level. And so one of the highlights of what we were able to do this summer, because it was a long, hot summer, was the Freedom Rides. We did a Freedom Ride where we actually went and connected in communities all across the South. We went and we call it the Reverse Freedom Ride, because what we did is we went back to many of those places where the original Freedom Ride took place, and literally organized in those communities and really mobilized the voices of folks who are on the front lines fighting for voting rights. So in 9 days, we went to 10 states with 9 places in DC, but we support DC statehood. We were able to do everything from rallies. We were in West Virginia doing events at the state capitol. We did actions, we did rallies, we did door to door, some of the canvassing in communities where we caravanned, and we did marches. Part of what we wanted to do is to get 3 messages out. 1, that we needed the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. 2, that in order, when we're talking about democracy, it's going to require us as the people are really putting pressure and accountability measures on our elected officials to actually push the agenda that we want to see. And then 3, we always think it's really important. I always say mighty rivers are filled drop by drop. That is important that we're building out our ecosystem of as we're doing this work. I think it's important. There's a couple of things I just want to note that I think is important for us to recognize, that we have to see this fight not as a transactional moment. It has to be transformative. Part of why we are being attacked right now in our community is not because we're losing, y'all. It's because we're winning. Right. And part of what has to happen is when there are attacks that come of our community, we cannot allow our communities to be vulnerable. We can't let Black folks be punished for participating in the process of using their own agency. And so in the midst of this moment, it can't just be about we're protecting voting rights in the interim, in the moment, because we also have to recognize that even the 1965 Voting Rights Act was a compromise. It wasn't everything that we expected. Matter of fact, every 25 years, we have to ratify that. We have to move towards structured policy that is actually going to create the kind of permanence of the protection of the right to vote in this country that we deserve, that we have fought for, that we worked for. So we can't stop. We have to keep going. That we have to have federal policy that protects us, because on the federal level, but also on the state and the local level. What is happening right now, we're already seeing it. You know, as my sister Helen talked about, what we're seeing happen in Georgia, not just around kind of the work that we're doing, but they're already enacting a process, which I call it the trifecta effect. What is happening is, 1, they're literally dismantling on the local election boards. People like Helen Butler, who has been a long-term stunt. She knows this electoral process and the election process backwards and forwards. She's been removed off the board for no other reason other than who she is and what community she comes from, right? And so we're seeing that already happen with the bill that passed recently in Georgia. We're also seeing that they literally are trying to remove people off not only the voting the election boards, but literally create and shift the process to weaponize the administrative process. What does that mean? And what that means is not just when we're talking about a presidential election, but we're talking about on the local level. We're getting attacked on the local level for school board races. It will change the trajectory around when we're talking about how we can elect county commissioners and sheriffs and DAs on the state level and on the federal level. That which leads us to, in this moment, what we have to really recognize is the work that we were doing this summer is really, while it's directed for voting rights legislation, what we have to do is build out an ecosystem and infrastructure, a political infrastructure that will provide protection for Black voters in this country. We can no longer be subject to what political party is in power. We have to literally be able to put the kind of legislation in place that, whether it's Republican or Democrat, that might decide about the policy, but our rights should not be contingent upon what political party is in power. And in order to have that, we have to have federal legislation that, at the very least, there's a minimum protection across the board in this process. And then I'll lead just by saying that all along the summer, we've been doing direct action, along with the leadership of Melanie Campbell and others. We've been doing, the brothers even came out and did a direct action as well in support of what the sisters had done. And we have to continue that. We have to literally do sustained action that will actually move this forward. We need federal legislation, but we also need to make sure that Black institutions that are on the ground, grassroots groups doing this work, that we're moving resources and that we are building out the political infrastructure that would ensure our independence and our protection as voters in this nation.
Okay, I just want to get a rapid response from all of you just very quickly because we are kind of running out of time here. Give one or two quick recommendations on how people that are listening to this right now can get involved in the voting rights movement. And I'll start with you, Ms. Vera.
Well, you know, I'm an acolyte of Oakley Carmichael, and he used to always say, organize, organize, and be an organization. So I would advise any people, especially young people, attach yourself, get involved with your local organization. It could be the NAACP, it could be the Roundtable, it could be Until Freedom, and join the movement through an organization and be aware of the efforts to push against, I don't know, an effort to just enslave us. I think it's way beyond voting. I think it's way beyond anything to do with it. I think it has the whole thing of putting us as Black people back in our place because we're too far out. And so I think that I would advise them to get involved with whatever organization is active, to pay attention, to read, and to advocate with your local officials that what's going on in your own community, and then push with the national organizations that you can associate yourself with. Organize, organize, organize.
And Joy, I'll ask you next. What do you think needs to be done to help build out that transformative ecosystem that LaTosha was talking about?
Well, I know many of us are gonna talk about organizing, and that is important. Do something. And of course, I gave our text to action number earlier. I want to say something else. We also need to be talking to our friends. We also need to be talking to our family. They need to be engaged. We also have to be talking to our Caucasian allies who are our friends and who are our family. And we need to be saying to them, this is important to me, that these efforts to frustrate the franchise actually impact disproportionately people who look like me. Talk to your Republican friends. Let them know these efforts actually suppress the vote across parties. That's what we need to be doing, because it's like LaTosha said, it's about this ecosystem where we say voting rights are sacred in the United States, okay? And they should never be frustrated. There is no basis for voter fraud. There is no legitimate basis. So if there is no legitimate basis for voter fraud, then what is this about? And that can't be something that any of us engage in. So I want you to do your direct action yourself, but I also want you to get your friends and your family engaged, especially those who don't think of this president of mine. And I want you to tell the real stories about how these measures that are creeping across the country actually impact people who look like you. Thank you so much, Melanie, for having me. JOYCELYN, you're my sister in this struggle. TAMIKA, good to see you, girl. LaTosha, thank you so much. Helen, Miss Cora, Barrett, I am honored to be on a panel with you.
Thank you so much. Helen, really quickly, we're running out of time. What do you say we need to do to build out that ecosystem?
Cora said it all. Be engaged in the process. Join that board of elections so that you can control the process. Attend that state election board meeting so that you know what is happening and voice your opinion. Run for office, be that elected official that will get it done. So that's what we need you to do. Join these organizations right on the ground that are on the ground doing this work. We need you. We have the Black Youth Vote for young people. Join the Black Women's Roundtable. Join the People's of Jordan. Join Black Voters Matter. Join us all, the early. Join us all, but become engaged in this process and don't be on the sidelines.
Thanks so much. Tamika, very quickly.
So Until Freedom has been training activists around the country. So for your younger activists who want to get in the work or are already in the work, college students and others, we are a home to help with that training and to help give them an opportunity to participate. We've trained thousands of activists across the country. We trained thousands within just the Louisville, Kentucky space while we were there protesting on behalf of Breonna Taylor. And those skills are transferable. How we can keep engagement on the ground and continue to be a support system that shakes up this movement and keeps up, and also just being active on the ground, we're able to do that work. And so we suggest that anyone who has young folks that need to be trained, come to us so that we can help to do that and to get them ready.
Thank you so much. Melanie, I'll turn it over to you to give our last words.
Well, thank you, sisters. Thank you, JOYCELYN, for being the awesome moderator that you always are. And just thank everybody. So for those of you out there who are out there listening, you can make a difference. So go to blackwomentake.action.org, blackwomentake.action.org, and we will make sure to keep you involved in this voting rights movement. We all have a role to play in ensuring that we save our democracy for our children and our children's sake, so that we have self-determination. We help build this country. It is all of our democracy. So let's get involved. blackwomentake.action.org. And thank you again, CBCF, for partnering with us and having us be a part of your annual legislative conference again with the Black Women's Power Table, with the Black Women's Roundtable. Thanks again. Stay involved.